Good evening. It is Wednesday, January the 4th, about 6:55 p.m. This is Shay Gibson with Weather Flow and Wind Alert, and we're going to be talking about the winter event heading for the Carolinas. It looks like at this point we're going to be seeing some snow and wintry weather enter into Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. Just how far it makes it towards the coast has yet to be answered, and it's very uncertain right now. But let's go ahead and look at what's going on overall over the continental United States. This is the area that we're watching right here, this batch of energy that made it in from the Pacific across California down into Utah and Colorado. This is eventually going to dive to the southeast towards Texas and then transfer quickly over into the Gulf by Saturday morning. And then this is going to be where we really need to watch where this low goes. One track takes a little bit closer to the coastline. The Euro trended on this earlier. It's now bringing it just a little further out, but it still keeps it kind of hugged in. And then the other track from the GFS keeps it a little bit further off the coastline. Each of these tracks is significant on whether or not we'll see snow or wintry mix make it all the way to the coastline. We're pretty certain that these zones, the Midlands and upstates of South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia, will all definitely be seeing some snow at some point. The totals have yet to be determined, so we're going to wait on that. The local National Weather Service offices will make their determinations pretty soon. We're going to be watching the WPC allotments as well. So here's that track again. The closer it comes to the coastline, the more rain we're going to see, because it's going to be drawing in a little bit of warmer air. As we know, low pressure has counterclockwise rotation around it. So we have the Gulf Stream out here. It's going to be bringing a little bit warmer air into the coastline with that precipitation to keep mainly just a cold rain. If we have the track further off the coast and that Arctic air makes it down into the area sooner, we could see the freezing levels allow for the potential of this moisture that's wrapping around it to mix and actually have snow all the way to the coast. I don't think we're going to have any accumulations here. Our ground is too warm, the water's warm, so it's nothing to get too excited about and nothing to really invest your interest on just yet as far as making snow along the coastline. It looks right now like it's going to be more of a cold rain with possible freezing rain later in the afternoon as temperatures cool down. So let's take a look at the jet stream, and this is kind of important. This tells us how this system is going to dip. So this is 300 millibars. This is pretty high up, around 30,000 feet, and we're getting to where we see this dip in the jet stream. The polar jet is actually coming down and around down into the central United States. The subtropical jet is what's been here for a couple of days now, and it's streaking along at about 150 to 170 knots. By Saturday morning, this dip occurs. This is called a negatively tilted trough, and at the mid-levels it becomes more of a short wave. So this is what is actually going to start providing moisture up from the Gulf of Mexico up over a loft overhead to provide more moisture to drop down to the ground. So as we go in time, we see that this jet stream takes a little bit more of a dip towards the southeast, and this is what's going to draw. If we look at the GFS at the 500 millibar, I'm sorry, let me go back and do this one, and we run this forward to 54 hours, and we start to see that dip at 500 millibars at 18,000 feet. You see that there is some lift going on here. This is GFS model as well too, but you see the lift coming up from the west-southwest and eventually to the southwest. So we get some of that Gulf moisture aloft. We could see some higher snow potential specifically in this area of North Carolina, and that's kind of what the focus is on right now for the higher snow totals. That's what the models are pointing to. Nothing for certain yet, but let's go ahead and take a look at what the mean sea level pressure run is taking it, and you can see how the low sort of drops down into the Gulf quickly by Saturday morning. From Friday night to Saturday morning, it goes from Texas to the Gulf, and you can see the low here just to the west of Tampa Bay, and you can already see the snow breaking out across central to eastern North Carolina and then over to western North Carolina, up states, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and even Mississippi, and down even to the western parts of the Florida Panhandle. We're starting to see a mix as that Arctic air drops down behind it. If we look at the 2-meter air temperature at that time, we see there's the freezing line right there, and we go forward and we see that freezing line drifting down further into the southeast. So as we go forward from that point, we see the low transfer over to the Atlantic Ocean pretty quick by Saturday morning at about 7 a.m. and then riding off the coastline by 1 p.m. This is where temperatures are going to start to drop because that Arctic air is going to be rushing in down into it as well and pushing towards the coastline. This is going to make a lot of differences whether or not we see that precipitation make it here. So if we look at Weather Bell with the GFS, we're going to run this back to 72 hours. We'll even go to Friday afternoon. So we'll start about Friday afternoon is when a lot of this is going to start for western North Carolina and parts of the southeast. And we'll run it forward And you can start to see the mix blending in across Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and then it starts to head towards the southeast, and we can see right there where the mix is. Now the yellows and the oranges represent ice or sleet, the pink is freezing rain, and then the purple and the blues are snow. And you can see where the breakdown is. This is the precipitation type, and we can see how the sleet and the freezing rain makes it all the way to the coastline. But if you notice right here, there is actually this red line represents where the melting layer is. So this cold line, this line right here is the 540. This is the freezing line. This red line is where is above freezing. So we're going to be caught in the middle of this. So we may just see some sleet fall. There is potential for a few flurries, but it's likely going to melt as soon as it hits the ground. There's no accumulation expected because the ground temperature is so warm. Plus we have warm waters in the area, a lot of warming mechanisms. In fact, the lows out here, and we have counterclockwise motion around the lows, which wraps a little bit of warm air off the Gulf Stream into the coast. So we have a northerly wind expected at that time, but if we get a little bit of a northeast bend around that low, we start to get this northeast wedge into the area. We also get what's called a warm nose, and that looks like this on a graph. So the warm nose is a warm layer that sort of wedges in over the coastline. This is very typical of Charleston weather, where we see this happen, and you have this warm air where you have snow falling aloft, it melts and then refreezes. If it's freezing temperature at the surface, it'll refreeze as sleet. If not, we just get freezing rain right a little bit further over in that wedge. If it melts and it's freezing at the surface, then we see freezing rain. Otherwise, it would be all rain, and that's usually what happens in these kind of events with the low so close to the coastline. The further away it goes, the more likely that we could see some of the snow or some flurries come out of this. We go further in time by Saturday evening, Saturday night. This is Saturday at about 7 p.m. Things quickly wind down for the system. So that's the GFS. The Euro, if we go back to 48 hours out, Friday 1 p.m. and run this forward, the Euro brings it very similar. It has more of a mixing layer across the mid-states into North Carolina. We do believe that that's probably more likely to be snow based on some of the other information we're seeing. So the Euro might be a little bit sluggish to turn all this to snow by Saturday afternoon, but we do think that most accumulation is going to occur in northeast North Carolina. In fact, if we look at the total snow amounts, the Euro is really ramping it up over northeast North Carolina, even parts of Virginia, Virginia Beach, Norfolk area, at 10 inches of snow. That doesn't seem very reasonable at this time. I think that's a little bit high. I think it's incorporating some of the other liquid totals into that, and not just saying all snow 10 inches. It might be more like 5 to 8 inches of snow, and then it's also encountering some of the other sleet and freezing rain or rain that falls before it changes over. So the number seems a little bit high on the Euro. In fact, if we look at the GFS, we can take a look at the cumulative snow amounts. GFS is being a little bit bullish on this as well. It's also bringing totals up to 12 inches. So we don't think it's going to be that much. We're thinking somewhere around 6 to 8 inches at this point, but things could change over the next day or two as the system comes together. Now we talk about sea surface temperatures in that warm nose. Right now the Gulf Stream is at a pretty sultry 80 degrees out there. As we get into the Florida or the Hatteras, Florida slope where the green is, the temperatures start to drop off to about 65 to 63 degrees. And as we get to coastal shelf waters here, went up a degree from yesterday at 58.3, so that's a little bit warmer than normal, and that's yet another reason why when we get low pressure off the coast, and then we have these counterclockwise motion and bringing some of that warm air into the coastline, we have Arctic air moving down into it, so that usually will create mainly just a rain layer or even a freezing layer if that Arctic freezing line makes it all the way to the coastline. And this is usually something that occurs here where the cold air meets it, but then it waits till later. So we're looking at later Saturday afternoon to Saturday evening if we have any chance at all. It would be brief, 2 to 4 hour period where we might be able to see some sort of wintry precipitation. That's my thoughts for right now, but that's not definite. Looking at the WPC probabilities for the southeast, we have a very low probability to see any snow accumulating greater than or equal to 1 inch. We're just at the line in North Charleston, so these areas have a very, very low chance of even seeing snow, even up to 1 inch or greater. So that doesn't mean we couldn't see flurries. We have to really watch Lake Moultrie and Lake Marion as well, because you could see some lake effect snows as the air temperature drops 15 to 20 degrees below the actual temperature of the lakes. Sometimes you can get this lake effect snow if the freezing line has made it there at the surface. You can get some enhanced snow along the southern side of the lakes, especially with a northerly wind. So we'll be watching those areas as well. that is the snow accumulation. Now if we look at freezing rain, this is where Charleston starts to come into the picture with the freezing layer, and I'm gonna bring this in to Saturday and zoom in on the area. Now we start to come into play with the freezing precipitation, such as sleet and freezing rain. We actually move it up into about the 20 to almost 30 percentile to see some of that. Mount Pleasant along the immediate coast dropped off a little bit down to about 10 to 15%. This was a little bit higher earlier, but you can see how close that line is and where the percentages start to go up to see any kind of wintry weather whatsoever. You can see up here in northeast North Carolina that the precipitation, freezing precipitation accumulation grows. In fact, if we look there at the snow amounts, run this through Saturday as well, we'll zoom in and we see up near Greenville, Rocky Mount, for greater than or equal to 4 inches, they're still in the 60% chance. Even greater to or equal to 6 inches of snow, they're still in the 30% chance. So this area is probably going to be primarily the one spot that sees the most, if any at all, for the Outer Banks. We don't know about that yet, but it looks like northeast North Carolina and up into Norfolk and Virginia Beach is going to see a majority of this for now, at least what the models are pointing to. We'll have yet to determine exactly how much snow is expected to fall there. We'll wait for the local National Weather Services and those office. For now, here's the Charleston National Weather Service thinking on this with possible winter weather this weekend. And you can see here the yellow line, winter weather possible, too soon to reliably forecast the amounts. Here in the middle where we are, winter weather threat highly uncertain. And then as we get further south along southeast South Carolina and Georgia, winter weather is not expected at all. So we're just above the cut to even see a possibility of this, and it's a very low possibility at that. So nothing for certain yet. Right now, our current winds right now, we have winds out of the west-northwest at about 6 knots, gusting to 7 knots. We had a westerly flow earlier, about 15 to 20 knots. So that's kind of it locally for us. If we look at our temperatures for the next few days, we're going to continue to see that westerly zonal flow through tomorrow and then even into tomorrow night. But Friday, things are going to change up as the winds change up. As that low pressure starts to organize in the Gulf, we'll see the winds start to become a little bit more variable, and then we'll start to pick up from the north on Saturday. You can see the temperatures dropping tomorrow just a little bit down to near 60, and then Friday at 57. And then we see a sharp drop into Saturday at 37 degrees for a high. This is from the GFS as well, with a low of 32. And that means that the temperatures will be falling all day long. As we get late into the afternoon into the night, that's where we start to approach the freezing mark. Then we get even colder on Sunday for a low of 25, and then Monday is going to be maybe some of our lowest temperatures this year, down near 20 degrees. Earlier today I was seeing 18 degrees, so that could vary by just a few. But either way, the wind chills will be up because the wind is going to be up. We'll have to really watch out for that. So if you have any plants, make sure those are covered coming up for this weekend, or any pets, bring them inside. And also warm water on the pipes. That always helps as well when you get temperatures down to 20 and 25 degrees. You could have some water pipes bursting. So, and then we see a gradual climb through early next week into mid next week. And I think that's going to do it for now for the winter weather event update. And we're going to be on the Carolina Weather Group tonight at 9 o'clock p.m. If you want to join us there on Facebook events, just look up Carolina Weather Group. We're going to do a special show. We'll have Rob Fowler. I'm sorry, not Rob Fowler, Dave Williams from Channel 4 with us, Brad Panovich from Charlotte. We'll also have Gary Stevenson from Raleigh, and we'll have a couple of other folks joining us from different news stations. We'll have Jason from Asheville, and we'll go from there. And until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll check back with you soon.